Have you ever wondered why the moment you stop running towards someone, they suddenly turn and begin running toward you? It feels almost like magic, but it is not. It is a law of human desire, older than kingdoms and deeper than the philosophies etched in marble. To chase is to declare dependence. To pull back is to reveal strength. And in that reversal, the entire dance of power between man and woman shifts. For in every heart, there lies a hunger, not merely for attention, but for recognition. And when that recognition is not freely given, when it is withheld with calm and quiet self-possession, the soul of the other begins to stir with restlessness. This is the paradox. The one who holds himself still becomes the one who moves the other. As Marcus Aurelius once noted, power belongs not to those who reach outward in desperation, but to those who govern themselves with restraint. Imagine a man who refuses to pursue endlessly, who withdraws from the frantic rhythm of proving his worth. To some women, he becomes a riddle unsolved, a mirror in which her own projections begin to tremble. She wonders, why does he not bend? Why does he not strive? In his silence, her insecurities awaken. In his detachment, her desire sharpens. This is not cruelty, it is the clarity of presence. The Stoics taught that a man must stand as a fortress, unmoved by storms, unshaken by praise or rejection. And it is precisely in this immovability that attraction begins to burn. You see, the unconscious craves what it cannot control. Jung called it the shadow of longing, the part of us that reaches out for what feels beyond grasp. When you stop chasing, you embody that shadow for another. You become the figure upon the horizon, distant, luminous, yet untouchable. And in this distance, the other begins the chase, compelled not by logic, but by the primal pull of mystery. Yet let us not be deceived. This is not a game of manipulation, not a trick to ensnare hearts. It is instead the revelation of truth, that your worth was never meant to be bargained with. The frantic need to chase springs from fear, from the wound of abandonment echoing deep within. But the refusal to chase, the ability to stand firm, springs from healing, from knowing that whether they stay or go, you remain whole. Think of Epictetus, who said, "It is not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." In relationships, the pursuit often becomes reaction, an anxious flailing against silence, a desperate attempt to close distance. But when you refuse, you rise above reaction. You step into response, deliberate and serene, and in that poise, you radiate something rare: sovereignty. You must understand, the human psyche is wired to sense this sovereignty. It is felt in the way you speak with measured calm, in the way you do not plead or demand, but allow. It is etched in your eyes that do not dart for approval, but rest steady as though lit from within. This steadiness calls forth respect, and respect deepens desire. Have you noticed how quickly admiration fades when you place yourself beneath another's feet? But when you stand upright, neither cold nor needy, the dynamic transforms. You no longer orbit their sun. You become your own center of gravity. And once you embody that, others will feel the pull. They will chase, not because you engineered it, but because truth draws them in. Still, this path is not without trial. To withhold the chase is to confront your own inner void. The silence will test you. The distance will whisper fears of loss. But here is where Stoicism meets modern psychology. To refuse the chase is to rewire your nervous system, to teach your heart that abandonment does not equal death, that rejection is not annihilation. It is to become the witness of your own cravings and say, I am more than this hunger. So when you step back, when you refuse to run, you are not only shifting external dynamics, you are reclaiming your inner kingdom. And from this kingdom, you learn the most paradoxical truth of desire. It is not given to those who demand it, but to those who can live without it. And in learning to live without it, you often find it chasing you back. When you no longer chase, the silence around you grows heavy. At first, it feels like absence, like an echo chamber where no reply comes. But look closer. What you think is silence is actually pressure, a weight pressing upon the other person. Because desire is not just about closeness, it is about tension. When you release your grip, the rope of connection swings back toward them. It is in that gap, that pause, that the unconscious begins to stir. Jung understood this. The psyche cannot bear a vacuum. When you stop filling the space with pursuit, their imagination rushes in to fill it. They begin to wonder, why has he pulled away? Who is he becoming without me? What does he see in himself that I do not? And suddenly, your absence becomes more powerful than your presence ever was. This is the paradox of restraint. To many, chasing feels like proof of love, yet in reality, it erodes attraction. For what is freely available is rarely valued, and what is always present becomes invisible. But when you step back, you cloak yourself in scarcity, and scarcity amplifies worth. As Seneca wrote, it is the power of the mind to be unconquerable, and an unconquerable spirit, once glimpsed, cannot be ignored. Observe the man who no longer bends his schedule, who no longer reshapes his being to win affection. He walks into the world with quiet purpose. His energy flows into work, into growth, into solitude that refines his soul. He does not announce this shift, but it radiates. Those who once dismissed him feel the shift in their bones. They sense the loss of control, and in that loss, they awaken to longing. You too must see the deeper current beneath this surface. It is not about games, it is about alignment. When you refuse to chase, you align with reality. That true connection cannot be forced, and worth cannot be begged for. You begin to inhabit the archetype of the sovereign, the figure who does not plead for belonging, but grants belonging through his very presence. This is why people chase you when you stop chasing them. They are drawn not to manipulation, but to the rare sight of a soul at rest in its own power. Think of the ancient warrior who stands before the storm. His sword is sheathed, his eyes fixed not on the lightning, but on the calm horizon. Others panic, run, flail, but he remains still. That stillness becomes more magnetic than any battle cry. For the human heart yearns not for chaos, but for anchors, and in your refusal to chase, you become that anchor. Yet beware, this path demands courage. The moment you stop chasing, your wounds will surface. Abandonment will whisper lies of unworthiness. Old memories will rise. The parent who withdrew, the lover who betrayed, the friend who left without explanation. All these shadows will stir, testing your resolve. If you are not conscious, you will fold. You will run again, offering yourself cheaply just to soothe the ache. But if you endure, if you stand, something greater is born: self-possession. Self-possession is more than confidence. It is the sacred ability to belong to yourself before anyone else. It is the refusal to sell your soul for temporary comfort. It is the inner nod that says, even if all leave, I remain. From this ground, you no longer beg for affection, you radiate it. You no longer hunt for validation, you embody it. And when you embody it, others are drawn like moths to flame. The truth is plain. When you stop chasing, you do not lose power. You reveal it, and power revealed is irresistible. Those who once overlooked you will strain to capture your gaze again. Those who once felt secure in your pursuit will wonder what they have lost. They will reach, they will call, they will chase. Not because you forced them, but because you became the thing they could not control, the sovereign spirit that does not kneel. When you hold steady in this refusal to chase, the entire fabric of the relationship begins to shift. At first, the other may test you, throwing silence, hints, even provocations into the space between you. This is the unconscious trying to reassert its old rhythm, its comfort in knowing you would always step forward first. But you remain unmoved. And in that stillness, the dynamic crumbles. What once was a one-sided pursuit becomes an unfamiliar emptiness for them, and emptiness often becomes unbearable. Psychologists call this the activation of attachment triggers. The absence of your pursuit awakens fear in the other. Fear of losing significance, fear of no longer being desired, fear of being invisible. The more they feel this absence, the more they project onto you. In their imagination, you become larger, more enigmatic, more valuable than before. It is not rational, it is archetypal. You become the hero who has withdrawn into the forest, the king who has retreated to his throne room, the lover who does not beg for love, but waits to be chosen. This is why silence, when wielded with dignity, carries more weight than 1,000 pleas. Your refusal to chase forces the other to confront themselves. They are no longer distracted by your constant presence. Instead, they must face the truth of their own desire. Do they want you, or did they simply want control over you? Do they seek genuine connection, or did they only crave validation? Your stillness is the mirror in which their hidden motives are revealed. For the Stoics, this practice is nothing less than freedom. To need nothing from another is the highest form of power. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The nearer a man comes to a calm mind, the closer he is to strength." And in the realm of relationships, this calm mind is the refusal to barter your dignity for scraps of attention. When you stand calm in detachment, you radiate strength. Strength that the other begins to crave, even if they do not understand why. Consider how often relationships collapse under the weight of overgiving. One chases, one flees, one begs, the other withdraws. It is not malice, it is the ancient dance of polarity. Too much pursuit suffocates desire, for desire feeds on tension, not certainty. When you stop chasing, you reintroduce tension into the field. You become unpredictable again. And unpredictability, though frightening, is also intoxicating. But here lies the deeper truth. The power of not chasing is not about turning the tables on another. It is about turning inward. It is about the alchemy of transforming anxiety into poise, desperation into patience, longing into wholeness. When you practice this, you no longer act as the child desperate for approval, but as the adult who governs his own spirit. You embody what Jung called individuation, the process of becoming whole unto yourself, integrating both your light and shadow, no longer dependent on the gaze of the other to tell you who you are. Do you see the beauty in this? By refusing to chase, you are not closing yourself to love. You are refining your capacity for it. You are saying, I will not love from emptiness. I will not love from fear. I will love from fullness. And if you cannot meet me there, then let the silence stand. Such a posture is magnetic, not because it plays games, but because it emanates authenticity. People are drawn to those who do not need them, precisely because such souls remind them of what freedom looks like. And when they begin to chase, as they often do, you will feel the reversal. Their words will soften, their gestures will grow uncertain, their attention will return. They will test the edges of your calm, searching for signs that you still care. This is not the moment to gloat, nor the time to manipulate. It is the moment to remain anchored, to prove that your refusal was not a strategy, but a way of being. To show that your center cannot be moved by games, but only by truth. For it is not the chase you seek, it is the alignment. And when you embody sovereignty, those who are meant for you will find themselves drawn, not because you begged, but because your presence called them into greater strength as well. That is the true gift of refusing to chase. You free both yourself and the other from the prison of need, and in that freedom, something purer can emerge. When you no longer chase, you begin to embody the paradoxical magnetism of stillness. For in every relationship, there is an invisible current, and whoever anchors deepest into themselves begins to pull the other without words. This anchoring is not aggression, not pursuit. It is quiet gravity, and gravity does not run. It simply holds its place, and all else must orbit around it. Notice how the one who chases is always in motion, always restless, always emptying themselves into the space between. But the one who refuses to chase is like a mountain, silent, immovable, yet impossible to ignore. From this mountain, you radiate presence, and presence, when not diluted by desperation, becomes irresistible. The human heart craves challenge as much as it craves comfort. When you were always available, always offering, you became comfort without challenge, warm but predictable. And predictability dulls the edge of desire. Yet when you step back, when you hold your ground, you become challenge again. You awaken that restless energy within the other, the need to prove themselves, to win you, to close the gap you refused to close. Desire is not born of certainty, but of distance, and you now embody that distance. Modern psychology calls this the pursuer-distancer dynamic. It is the rhythm where one leans in and the other leans out. The more one chases, the more the other retreats. But when the pursuer stops, when the rhythm collapses, the retreating one feels the void. Their nervous system, once soothed by your pursuit, now spikes with unease. They must act, they must move, they must chase to restore balance. This is not cruelty, it is the natural physics of attraction. And yet, at a deeper level, something greater is happening. By refusing to chase, you are dismantling your own illusions. For beneath the chase often lies the child who once begged to be seen, the wounded part of you that equated love with effort. Every unanswered message, every cold glance once pierced you because it echoed an older wound, perhaps a parent's neglect, perhaps a betrayal long buried. The chase was never only about them, it was about soothing that old ache within. But the moment you refuse to chase, you begin to reparent that child. You say to yourself, I am enough, even without their gaze. This is individuation, the integration of the fragmented self. You gather the pieces of your soul that once scattered toward others, and you weave them back into wholeness. Jung would say, you are no longer projecting your worth outward. You are reclaiming it inward. And when you do, something extraordinary occurs. You no longer need them, yet you are more desired than ever. For people are drawn to those who do not need them, because it signals abundance. It whispers, here is someone who belongs to themselves. Here is someone who cannot be broken by loss. That energy is intoxicating because it awakens a deep unconscious longing in others, the desire to stand in that same freedom. But hear this carefully. The power of not chasing is not to punish, not to manipulate. It is to reveal whether the bond was genuine or an illusion propped up by your endless effort. When you stop running, if they never turn, you lose nothing. You only expose the truth that was already there. But if they turn and begin to chase, you see the force of polarity restored. And either way, you remain whole. So, when you feel the urge to pursue, pause. Ask yourself, is this love or is this fear? Is this connection or is this compulsion? For the man who governs himself does not run after shadows. He walks in his own light, and in that light, others cannot help but follow. There is a moment in every withdrawal when the silence becomes more powerful than any word you could have spoken. It is the crucible where your old self would have broken, where you once felt compelled to rush forward, to close the gap, to reassure them of your presence. But now you remain still. And in that stillness, something ancient stirs, not just in them, but in you. For restraint is not passive. It is active mastery, the disciplining of the most unruly parts of your psyche. The urge to chase is not only external, it is the echo of your own chaos. To refuse it is to stand at the gates of your own unconscious and say, "Not today. I will not betray myself for comfort." This is why the Stoics called detachment a form of freedom. It is not indifference, it is sovereignty over your reactions. When you hold to this sovereignty, others begin to feel it as a vibration, even if they cannot name it. They may find themselves restless in your absence, replaying old conversations, crafting messages they never send. They may oscillate between anger and longing, because something in them cannot bear the loss of your energy. This is projection at work. The shadow they once cast upon you no longer finds its screen, and now they must face it themselves. You become the absent figure that haunts them, not because you acted, but because you ceased to act. And this haunting carries a strange beauty. For the human spirit is always magnetized to what it cannot control. What it owns, it takes for granted. What escapes, it must pursue. In this way, your refusal to chase makes you more vivid in their mind than your pursuit ever could. You are no longer the predictable flame, always at hand. You are the star, retreating into distance, forcing them to lift their eyes in wonder. This is why restraint feels so rare, so magnetic. In a world where people beg for validation, where voices shout louder and louder to be heard, silence cuts deeper. Silence unsettles. Silence forces confrontation. And in relationships, that confrontation can become the turning point. Either they rise to meet you, or they fall away. But you do not chase either outcome. You simply stand. Do you understand the depth of this? By refusing to chase, you are no longer entangled in the illusion that your worth lies in pursuit. You begin to embody what Jung described as the self, the archetype of wholeness that no longer seeks completion in another. This is not arrogance, it is clarity. You still desire, but you do not beg. You still care, but you do not collapse. Your love, like a river, flows freely, but it does not flood the banks in desperation. And when they finally feel the pull and turn back toward you, you will recognize the change. Their eyes will search for the certainty they once had. Their words will stumble. Their actions will reach. They will want again what they once dismissed. But here is where your discipline is tested. Do not fall into triumph. Do not gloat over their reversal, for the victory is not that they chase, it is that you no longer need them to. This is the Stoic paradox. By refusing to chase, you often awaken pursuit, yet your heart no longer depends on it. You have crossed into a higher ground where your value is not measured by another's recognition. And from that ground, you are free. Free to choose love, not from fear of abandonment, but from the strength of sovereignty. There comes a threshold where your refusal to chase stops being a tactic and becomes your very nature. At first, it was difficult, like holding your breath underwater, while the old self screamed for release. But with time, the silence no longer feels like emptiness. It feels like air. It becomes the space in which you finally meet yourself, without distortion. This is where the true metamorphosis unfolds, for when you cease to run after others, you discover the hidden truth. You were always running away from yourself. The desperate need for recognition, the restless hunger for affection, all were attempts to cover the void you feared to face. But in refusing to chase, you no longer flee that void. You enter it, and in entering, you see it for what it is, not a wound that defines you, but a doorway into wholeness. In Jungian terms, this is shadow work at its most intimate. The loneliness that rises when you stop chasing is the shadow of your unloved self. The shame, the fear of being unwanted, the memories of rejection, all of it surfaces. And instead of drowning, you learn to witness it. You breathe with it. You say, "Even here, I remain." This is the courage the Stoics spoke of. Not the courage to conquer empires, but the courage to sit with your own soul without running. And once you inhabit this place, something extraordinary happens. You begin to radiate a calm that cannot be faked. Your eyes no longer scan for approval. Your body no longer contracts with anxiety at the thought of abandonment. You stand, not as one waiting to be chosen, but as one who has already chosen himself. And this presence is unmistakable. Others feel it before you speak a word. It is then that the chase reverses, not because you willed it, but because human desire is magnetized to stability. People crave what they cannot easily possess, and your calm becomes that rarity. They sense that your attention, once given freely, is now precious. They reach for it, not because you withheld it manipulatively, but because you no longer need to give it. And in that freedom, your value shines. But here lies the final test. When they begin to chase, will you be swayed? Will you fall back into the old rhythm, giving away yourself the moment they turn their eyes toward you? Or will you remain steady, offering your presence not out of desperation, but out of choice? This is where your discipline must hold, where you must remember that the goal was never to make them run after you. The goal was to find the place where you no longer run at all. For the Stoic path is not about controlling others. It is about controlling yourself. You cannot command another's desire, but you can command your own spirit. You can choose dignity over desperation, clarity over chaos, freedom over fear. And from that place, every connection becomes purer, for it is born not of need, but of alignment.